I'm Jocelyn, I'm an alcoholic. Can I move this thing? Hold on. I have experience with the steps as they're laid out in our book. The help of several sponsors, a lot of meetings like this. I have amends that I'm in the process of making. To the best of my ability, I live in the latter steps. I live in all the steps, but primarily the latter steps. I always like to look out into the room when I speak, before I speak, because I see all these faces of people like me, alcoholics, who are all here for the same reason. Most people, some of you might be checking us out. I actually checked out AA about 10 years before I went to my second meeting. I remember my delusional thinking. It's bizarre. I mean, I can remember how I thought with no insight whatsoever. Let's just say I'm an alcoholic. It's the attached list because I've got a lot of addictions. I'm always in awe when I look out into these rooms. The most natural, the solution that this alcoholic chose for a long time was alcohol. That made sense to me. It worked. Worked for a long time. And then it turned on me, and then I tried to control it, but I didn't think that was alcoholism. I didn't know what alcoholism was. I remember in my teens, my brother saying to me, you need sugar and chocolate cake, and you eat chocolate cake the way an alcoholic needs alcohol. I was mortified, because I thought, okay, if he notices that about me and the way and my approach to sugar, like what if we were ever to know the truth about the way I needed alcohol and drugs? But I didn't think that was alcoholism. I didn't know that that was addiction. I just thought I had this abnormal need for it that other people didn't seem to have. I knew on some level it was connected to my feelings, that when I first picked up alcohol and all my other addictions, but when I first picked up alcohol, it was this immediate feeling of, oh my God, this is the solution. Like, this is how I'm going to get through my life. Because I felt quite overwhelmed in my early teens. I remember thinking at 12, how am I going to get through my life feeling these overwhelming feelings? Like, the thought terrified me. So when I found alcohol, when that first drink of alcohol went down at age 16, I really thought, oh, glory, hallelujah, I found the solution. This is the key to my life. And then I went after it with that, always trying to chase that initial high. I remember that high. I remember how it went down. I remember what it did to my mind. I got relief for the first time ever. And I pursued that. I tried that. They talk about me through this whole chapter. But they talk about the potential alcoholic. And I saw myself as a potential alcoholic. And I even told that to the intake counselor at the rehab. I said, I'm a potential alcoholic. I'm going to nip this in the bud. I might have a problem in 20 years, but I'll nip this in the bud today. And I thought that self-knowledge would cure it. I thought higher education, actually, in my case, would cure it. And I thought that people in AA learned how to control and enjoy their drinking. It didn't occur to me that they actually stopped drinking. That solution, that was just so beyond my conception. I couldn't imagine that. I didn't imagine that. My friend, who's not an alcoholic, she's a psychotherapist, said to me last night, oh, if I'd known that you were going to be speaking at the meeting this morning, I didn't have plans, I would come hear you speak. She's never been to an AA meeting. And I said, well, I'd probably be focused on one of the steps, so it wouldn't give you if you think you're going to hear my story, you wouldn't hear my story. It's the first step. And this is the second time. I don't usually tell my story. I don't usually focus on my alcoholism because I live in the solution today. But this is the second time in 2 weeks that I've actually been in a situation at an AA meeting where I'm telling my story. wonder what that means. It was exactly 35 years ago that I started what would turn out to be the bottom. I moved to Maine from New York City. I was training for a marathon, and I thought if I got out of New York for 3 months, I wouldn't have to drink. I knew that I was making a lot of promises to myself about not drinking so I could train for this marathon, and I was convinced it was the city. It was the smog, it was the subways, it was the boyfriend, it was the job, it was definitely New York. So I thought my plan was I was going to go to Maine, take care of my grandmother for 3 months, stop drinking, come back, run the marathon, have champagne at the finish line. This was my plan. And up until then, I had done all those things that it talks about in the book, about all the promises and all the things, not drinking beer. I mean, beer to me was for quenching your thirst. I liked hard liquor. Hard liquor got me where I wanted to go, fastest, and with as few calories as possible. That was really important to me. So I liked the hard stuff. And wine was something that you drank with meals. So, I switched from beer to whiskey to scotch to wine to, if I couldn't get anything, I even drank Boone's Farm apple wine. That is, I don't recommend that. Threw up a lot of that. That was on Sundays when you couldn't buy on Sundays. So I got to Maine, and I made this promise. They talk in this chapter about swearing off for a period of time, and after a long period of time, I constantly proved to myself that I could give it up. Constantly. And I could give it up. I couldn't stay stopped, but I could give it up. I did it many times. So I was going to Maine. I took a bus to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and I made a promise to myself that I wasn't going to drink in Maine because I had this 3-month plan. I got to Portsmouth. I wasn't over the border yet, so I had a couple beers. And I said, okay, well, it doesn't really start until I go over the border. So that made total sense to me. Total sense. My brother picked me up. I got to Maine. I didn't drink. For a long period of time, I didn't drink, 24 hours. I went through the night, I didn't drink. The next day it was hot. I remember thinking, if I mix lemonade with beer, that's a shanty. I know they drink that in England. It doesn't really count. It's just to quench my thirst. So I did that. And that worked out so well that I figured, I'm making too much of this thing. I'll just have it once in a while. Just once in a while. Once in a while, eventually, fast forward a couple of months, in this beautiful town on the water, I was drinking vodka in the morning with orange juice. I was on a health kick, wanted that vitamin C, and I was sure that you could not smell vodka. That was what I told myself. And I remember my grandmother at one point, who didn't have a sense of smell, but she would say, "What is that smell of alcohol?" I'd go, what is her problem? It's not me. So I'm drinking vodka. You can't smell that. So, and that was just kind of, ad nauseum. That was what went on. And I thought, I remember sitting in the morning, with my vodka with orange juice, looking out at the sun and the ocean, and it was so beautiful. And I thought, this is the life. I definitely need this drink because it makes it even more beautiful. We all know that. Alcohol makes things more beautiful. So that's okay. And, but it got to the point where the 3 months was ending. I was going back to New York. I had not fulfilled my promise to myself. And a friend of my sister's, I remember him saying that he was going to, for 90 days, he was going to explore his family issues around alcoholism. I thought, that sounds like a great idea. I can explore my issues around alcohol. I don't have to stop drinking. I can just explore the issues around them. So I got back to New York, told my therapist my theory about the potential alcoholism, And I was sure that the solution was self-knowledge and higher education. So I asked her for a referral to adult ed. That's where I thought I was going. I was going to take a class on chemical abuse. And I thought, for sure, if I understand more about how it works, for sure I can control and enjoy my drinking. And so she sent me to rehab. It was an outpatient rehab. I thought it was adult ed. I signed up for those classes. I said, put me in the AP classes, because I already know a lot. And she said, I thought she was the intake counselor. I mean, I thought that she was the registrar. She was the intake counselor. And I really thought that, she challenged me a little bit. She said, do you think you can not drink for 90 days? And I was very insulted. I thought, boy, she has misjudged me. She's just got this all wrong. And I said, you've misunderstood. I'm nipping this in the bud. I'm going to take your classes. You're going to apologize to me in 90 days. And you just made a big mistake here. But I was up for the challenge, because when someone challenges me, I'm very competitive. And I thought, I'm going to show this woman. She's going to eat her words. And but she couldn't get me into that class for a week. And she said, I strongly suggest you go to AA. I said, oh, no way. They will be a bad influence on me. I am not going to AA. She says, well, you might want to consider it. She gave me a meeting book, and I said, no, this is not for me. She goes, and don't take those pills either. And I said, they're in the garbage. So I went home, threw out the booze, threw out the drugs. And I was totally determined to show her. And, but I was shaking, and I was very nervous, and I did not know I was detoxing. I just knew that I was really nervous and that I was sweating for some reason. So I called her up and I said, you got to get me into that class tonight because I'm really nervous. She said, do you think you should be in detox? I said, detox? No, you totally misunderstood this whole thing. It's hot out, I'm sweating, I'm super nervous. Don't you have some place for nervous people? She goes, I think you should be in detox. I said, no. She goes, well then, please go to an AA meeting. I said, fine, I'll go to your AA meeting. Again, she's going to eat her words. So I went to the AA meeting that night. I was absolutely terrified that they were going to kick me out. I could see the whole scenario. They were going to know I wasn't an alcoholic. It was going to be embarrassing. They were going to kick me out, walk of shame out of the room. She's not an alcoholic. What's she doing here? So I figured I had another great plan. I had all these great plans. I'm going to go in there. I will watch what everybody does because I'm a quick study, and I will do exactly what they do. Then maybe I'll just go right under the radar and they won't know. So they're all sitting in a circle. It's a small meeting. The first thing I notice is that they don't look like alcoholics. They do not have trench coats. I don't hear the bottles clinking in their pockets. Like, I wonder if I'm in the right room here. But okay, they told me this is AA. I'll do what they do. So they go around the circle. And I notice they're saying their names, and they're saying, I'm so-and-so, I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict. And I'm thinking, I can do that. I can copy them. I know I can do this. They'll just pass right over me. So it gets to me, and I remember the feeling in my heart beating so loud. And I'm like, I can do this. I can pull this off. They'll just go right past me. So it got to me, and I remember taking a big breath and saying, I'm an alcoholic, and I'm a drug addict. I'm Jocelyn. And I knew. That was exactly what I was. In that moment, it was like, oh my God, I'm an alcoholic. Now what do I do? Now, what do I do? I'm an alcoholic. And I experienced that surrender, that relief, but I was terrified. I thought, how do I do my life? How do I do the laundry? How do I take the subway? How do I make a phone call? How do I shop? How do I push the back? I mean, what do I do now? I've done all these things impaired and thinking that was the solution, and now I have to do these things without anesthetizing drug in my body and in my brain. And I was particularly tormented by my thoughts. my obsessive thinking that would not leave me alone. And I can see now that I really used alcohol to quiet that mind, that delusional mind that was just going all the time. And I also realized that I had spent, even prior to picking up alcohol, I spent a lot of my waking hours fantasizing about a different life, about some other scenario where I'm the star of the show, but I don't feel bad and everything works out, and I get all those things in life without having to do any of the work, and I get a waiver and I get a pass if it doesn't work out. And so I spent a lot of those years trying to pick up alcohol the first time, just fantasizing. So here I was, and I actually, for a long period of time, in sobriety without that drug to calm my mind, I still lived in fantasy because reality was just hard. And but I had this sense that this was a lifeboat, that this was going to save my life. And fast forward 35 years, I still have a delusional mind. I still need this process that we do here. So how did I get into Big Book Step Study? I suffered a lot in sobriety without alcohol. I had around 11 years, I had a relapse for a couple of years on pills, and I had to tell the truth about that. I had to change my sobriety date. So the years after that, after I changed the sobriety date, I continued to come to AA. I didn't know about this. I didn't know about Big Book Step Study. I knew the steps were on the wall. I knew they were on page 59. I had that original big book. I'd changed all the words with a red marker. And I didn't know that it was a spiritual disease and that the solution was a spiritual solution. So by divine intervention, again, for the second time, about 8 or 9 years ago, I ended up here in this meeting, and again, I was hearing my story. I was hearing the story of people who had multiple years of sobriety who were tormented, like in their heads. They were tormented, restless, irritable, and discontent still. And I was at that point where I thought, if AA doesn't work for me, what am I going to do? Like, I couldn't see a solution. So I stayed here. I got a sponsor. I worked with a few sponsors. I continue to work with a sponsor. I work with women. I've had the experience of completing the process and not living in the latter steps. That doesn't work for me. I go back to the same solutions that I came up with my brilliant mind before. So I'm back going to meetings like this, doing service, making those amends that I had been putting off making, looking for women to sponsor. This works for me. I mean, this magic that happens in these rooms works for me, for this alcoholic. I do think I'm sicker than others. I think that's a positive mental health sign that I know I'm sicker than others. So here I am on a Saturday morning. It's a bridge back to life. I get to go do my life after the meeting's over. I'll be with AA friends after the meeting's over. I mean, this is an amazing, God-given, unmerited gift that I've been given here. And it's one day at a time I get to live in the solution and hopefully carry the message and not the mess. So that's enough out of me. I'd like to hear from you all.